Garbage men of Reddit, what is some of the coolest or craziest things you've seen being thrown away? I run my town's transfer station and recycling center. The amount of perfectly good or even brand new stuff I see thrown out daily is absurd. I collect and restore antique radios, so one of my personal favorites was a Thomas Edison phonograph from 1906. I have a 55 inches Samsung in my living room I got from work. Guy wanted a smart TV and just crap canned the old one. I even have a decent sized trailer cause some guy couldn't be bothered to sell it. Also, the money you save is amazing if you have mechanical and or electrical knowledge. I've never had to buy lawnmowers or snowblowers, weed whackers, etc, even things like shovels, garden tools, hoses, microwave dies. One will come in at work in a few days. It sounds horrible to say, but when someone's parent dies is the best cause they just bring all their crap to the dump. A Thomas Edison phonograph from 1906. Porn stars time. I've picked up all sorts of things. I used to make about $400 a month just picking up scrap aluminum, brass, copper to sell, until they cracked down on it. I've gotten a 32-inch flat screen. Sound cable had disconnected inside the TV. Took 5 minutes to fix. Worked perfectly fine. Even came with a remote. LOL. I've gotten new shoes, lamps, vacuums that were just clogged, fans, tools, etc. All sorts of things. Then the craziest was a card box. When I was scrapping, I would frequently look in boxes with several deflated used sex dolls and an empty anal butt plug starter kit package. Worst part was I knew the late 70s man who lived there. Never could look at him the same way again, LOL. I'm not a garbage man, but my father was back when I was a kid. After years of that, we had perfectly functional TVs, VCRs, game systems, stereo systems, movies, and games that you'd never know were found in the garbage. In the early 2000s, when I was poorer, I used to go dumpster diving for computer equipment. We found dozens of working or barely broken computers just one generation old. Even found a couple essentially working current generation computers. Bad repair shops would throw out so much working stuff it was absurd. I taught myself a lot about computers from the experiences of reclaiming those parts, probably more than I learned getting a degree a few years later. We once were stopped by the cops loading equipment into our car. We explained they had thrown it out. There wasn't a posted no trespassing sign, and the dumpster wasn't locked, so as far as we were aware, what we were doing was not only legal but a public service. He helped us load the equipment into our car. I don't know that I'd still go dumpster diving, but I sure have a lot of good memories from doing so. My dad worked for City Works and he told me about calls he got from customs about needing to dump things that got into the country illegally. One I remember was 500,000 fake Bic pens. Not me, but my dad. We live in a city, so he brings all kinds of crap. Best was probably when he found a working N64, games included, but he always tears the code off of thrown away Coke boxes for my Coke rewards. He, and indirectly I, get free movie tickets whenever. Free popcorn and drinks too. I worked on a garbage truck shortly after I graduated high school for a friend of the family's waste management company for about 2 years. They mostly did rural areas along with a few dumpsters at some restaurants and a lot of dairy farms. I found a few cool things here and there, but nothing terribly valuable or awesome. The most shocking thing is what these dairy farms would throw away. Now let me preface this by saying that the guy that I worked for was very much a good old country boy. Basically, if you paid for a dumpster, whatever you could fit in it, we hauled away. This led to a lot of hazardous materials from the farms, including animal parts, cows and deer. A lot of these farmers were hunters, did their own butchering, and, I assume, used syringes. On more than one occasion we would lift the dumpster with the winch to dump in the back of the truck, and there would be one or more dead calves that they had just thrown out. All that being said, I will never forget one of the biggest WTF moments of my life. One day we got to a farm that had built a reputation on throwing some really nasty crap out. It started out like any other collection. We backed the truck up, hooked the cable up to the back of the dumpster and started to hoist it up. After the dump was complete, we lowered it back down and unhooked it, and right as I went to start the packer, I became absolutely horrified. Sticking out of the pile of garbage was a human leg and foot, complete with nail polish on every toe. That visual will be burned into my brain forever. I called for the driver, and without hesitation he flipped the kill switch to keep the packer from running, jumped into the back of the truck and started digging. He was like a man possessed, flinging garbage, filth, and animal waste left and right as I stood there frozen in fear and shock. He then barked for me to come grab the leg and pull, so I did. We pulled and pulled as the body slowly slid from underneath the pile of garbage, and when we finally freed it, we finally saw what it was. One of those high-end, lifelike frick dolls. TLDR. Thought we found a human body buried in a dumpster. It ended up being a frick doll. That sounds like something straight out of a movie. In fact, one day I'm going to write a movie about a garbage man and use this in a scene. We'll send you a cut of the earnings. Some mother frick hid 2 front-end car springs in a bin on my round once. The jaw cycles and BBANG. Something ruffles my hair as we duck. We both peer inside. Nothing obvious, just some metal bits. That's when the springs come back down. One through someone's car rear window about 40 yards back, and the other bounces off a bus stop. Don't put big butt springs in your bin. They get put in a giant compressor, dickhead. That's some Final Destination crap right there. Weirdest a-hole. Skin sheep head. A gigantic, filthy dildo. Entire rooms full of furniture. We called them move out piles because it looked like the people were moving out of the house and just threw everything away. 18 large trash bags of brand name clothing at the same house. 3 weeks in a row. 18 each week. Coolest, a big box of brand new Rolling Rock beer embossed metal signs, which I sold on eBay for almost $400. 2 beautiful 1950s pastel colored sewing machines. 1 turquoise, 1 coral pink, with all their accessories. 12 working VCRs. This was in 2002, so DVD players were taking over. My loader, a month before I started driving, found 2 antique baseball cards. They were the small ones from cigarette packs, and were worth several $1,000s. He found them in the hopper, so he had no way of knowing which house they had come from, and no one ever claimed them. Food, perfectly fine food. I've worked at a major retailer in the UK as a warehouse guy. We are the ones that have the awful job of throwing away day-old food in those wheelie bins. I saw awful because 90% of the food is perfectly fine, like I would eat it. They keep a lot of meat in higher temps, and thus the sell-by dates are not as long as they would be if they were in a proper freezer. It was ridiculous. Crappy thing was, company policy prohibited us from giving it away or taking it for ourselves. When I was in Okinawa, there was a lady that came by and picked up the garbage bins from the mess hall. We separated garbage and trash, and she fed the garbage to her hogs. My dad was a garbage man about 8 years ago, and he found an old Game Boy Color with Pokemon Yellow. We were broke and living in a fifth wheel at the time, so this was awesome for 10-year-old me. I am not a garbage man, but I have plenty of stories. Years ago, when I was in my 20s, I was a land surveyor. The company I worked for had a lot of landfill companies for clients. Around 1 week a month, I would run a circuit performing volumetric studies on about 12 landfills. I would survey the fill area each month, provide that volume to the landfill, and they would use it for accounting purposes. So, I spent a lot of time walking over acres of fresh trash. The most amazing thing to me was the amount of cancel checks you would find. Folks just toss these things in the trash, with all of their financial information right there, and getting caught on the wind and floating away. But also, lots of P magazines. Rarely did a girly mag get buried though. The landfill heavy equipment operators would scavenge them, and there was a huge stockpile in their break room. Thousands of them. It was pretty gross. Once, I saw a haul truck get tipped over by a giant roll of cereal box cardboard. The roll was misprinted, so they just hauled it to the landfill. It was around 10 feet wide and 6 or 8 feet in diameter. I have no idea how much it weighed. It was dumped at the top of the landfill, but rolled off the working edge. Down below was a large Volvo off-road dump truck hauling cover dirt, and the roll hit it with such force that it crumpled the side of the truck and pushed the thing over on its side. And once I was sent out of town to work on a project in New Mexico, near El Paso, TX. That landfill was right on the Mexican border. The border fence ran right down the side of the property, and ICE had a small operations office right next to the landfill office. About 300 yards into Mexico was a small shanty town that I learned was built entirely from materials scavenged on the landfill. Working on a Sundays showed me why. Apparently ICE was not around most Sundays, so the entire population of that little shanty town would walk over to the landfill and start scavenging. Most of the landfill equipment operators were Mexican themselves, and they not only allowed this to happen, they often helped. If cool crap was found dumped into the landfill, the operators would pull it out and set it aside so the scavengers could easily grab it. The most touching, yet sad, thing was the kids' toys they salvaged for the scavengers. It was an interesting gig. But man, the smell was horrible, and once that smell got in your nose, it took days for it to go away. I spent almost a year being a garbage man back when I was 18 years old. The perks only come from working in rich neighborhoods. Everybody upgrades around Christmas time. Some people very carefully wrap everything in plastic and write to the garbage man on it. I have found everything from entire paraphernalia collections, nice bicycles, go-karts, a sword. The downside is people are freaking buttholes. They would bag their grass with the shittiest garbage bags known to man. I once opened a garbage can and there was a dead German Shepherd inside of it crammed in there. Of course I did what any person would do at that moment, is dump the entire garbage can upside down in their yard. I had a chemical explosion occur in the hopper when I pulled the lever to make the blade push the garbage into the truck. Something mixed and exploded. It blew me backwards and drove a piece of PVC pipe into my eyebrow. They wouldn't even let me go to the hospital, they just put butterfly stitches on it and made me finish my route. I called my girlfriend and she came and picked me up, and that was the end of my garbage career. It was a really crappy job, you get paid by the day. Back in the 80s it was $50 a day Monday through Friday. If you go the whole week without missing a day you get paid $100 for Saturday. Upside, some days you work 2 or 3 hours. Downside, my longest day was 17 hours. Who would do that? Not a garbage man. But under the media school, there was constantly a pile of equipment that was being thrown out due to updates. Some of this stuff was in perfect condition and could still be used. I'm talking about several $1,000 vacuum tube preamps used for public radio, film cameras that could be used for indie films, HD cameras with all the equipment with it. My interesting find was big electrical equipment. Transformers that could easily be kettleballs, they are so heavy, capacitors the size of small paint cans, which I guarantee will never be messed around with. Don't screw with capacitors, kids. Diodes as big as 2 packs of playing cards. Was at gun club, shot at what looked like Coors Light cans, were capacitors, instant glitter bombs. Not a garbage man. But I found a brand new iPhone 6s still in its case with its protector sticker on the screen and everything in it in the recycling bin. Probably a $100 big black office chair with a tear on it. Found some black tape, taped it up, works fine. Also found a bench press with 120 pounds of weight in near mint condition just out on the curb. That girl probably pooped on it. I was at a friend's house and he was cleaning. Threw away all his Magic the Gathering cards. I went into his trash and took that crap out and walked it across the street to my house, one box at a time. Still can't believe that crap. Not a garbage man, but my best friend's dad was, and he was always bringing home stuff. Best find was probably a 55 inches TV back when they still cost $10 K. The only thing wrong with it was the cable hookup was loose. 5 minutes of work fixed it. Once found a combo CD tape radio player that retailed for $400. The only thing wrong with it was someone had splattered paint on it. Video game and game systems galore that still worked. Everything from NES to PS1s. This was back when PS1 was still new. The best finds though was the P. My friend was the P king because of his dad. A story from my uncle was that someone he knew pulled up to a house and the guy wanted him to put his old Jeep into the compactor and said he'd give him $500 to do it. Trash guy agrees and the truck did a good job crushing it, but he did end up getting caught later and got disciplined and or fired. My ex-brother-in-law is still a garbage man to this day. The craziest thing that ever happened was crushing a full propane tank unknowingly. The explosion shot out of the back and caused first-degree burns on his face. This was years ago. Now the trash companies around here use those cool claws, and not the two guys hanging on the back. Moral of the story: dispose of your trash properly. A friend of mine works at waste management. One day he saw smoke coming out of the dumpster. Sometimes idiots throw away hot fireplace ashes, so he got the hose to put it out. Unfortunately it was a M-Lab that someone had thrown away, and apparently that doesn't react well to water. Big explosion. Knocked him on his butt, but he was fine. I worked at a dump for the local council and we have a free e-waste service for dumping all electrical items, which was a big thing seeing as general waste is $300 a ton. TVs, computers, phones, you name it, we took it. Our lunchroom had a big screen TV with surround sound and a lot of the good stuff was exchanged for beer to the garbers who would come check daily what we had. Also we legally owned all material on any PC or SD card. Think I had 20 at one point. So smash your laptops before throwing them away, guys. PS first post ever. A lady had between 5 and 10 trash bags full of cat crap each week. I don't know how many cats she had, but anyways that's a lot of crap. Dozens, probably. My father retired from the Department of Sanitation in NY a few years ago. When I was younger, somebody had thrown out an Xbox 360 and so he brought it home for me. It was in a clear plastic bag. Sometimes he would even find video games for the 360 and bring those home as well. I remember once he had brought home Rainbow Six Vegas. Dang good game. In Hawaii, there's bulky item pickup days where you leave all your items too large to throw away on the curb and the collectors scoop them up. Every time the rich neighborhoods have it, we stop by and scoop up slightly broken TVs, working microwaves, printers that ran out of ink, and pants. Why pants? They're a gold mine. Rich idiots throw them out without even checking the pockets. Some highlights were: not all items were dirty and needed cleaning. 60-ish flat screen. No remote. The only thing wrong with it was they jacked the contrast up to maximum. Once we turned it down, we were gold. 3 fully working laptops so far. I still have one Acer for a bot computer when I want to access shady sites or download sketchy things. Nice wallet, $300 cash. Credit cards, everything. It was in some guy's pants. We obviously knew where the guy lived, so we went back the next day to return the cards. Turns out he already cancelled them. Ultra high precision mirrors, spectrometers, the things that break light into individual frequencies, and other optical pieces. I broke most of them dicking around with them, but I still have some cool stuff from that find. $100 blender. Only remember it because they bent the metal part you stick in the plug and decided it was too broken to fix. Countless TVs. Every run we try to bring home 240 plus for screens. We leave everything else. A 70 inches rear projection TV. We didn't take the TV, just the screen. It's basically a giant magnifying glass which can be used to focus the sun and get crazy high temperatures in a small area. A spool of copper wire. I mean really? Air hockey table. We owned it until the pores clogged and we gave it away. Not a garbage man, but a few years ago during a council cleanup in my town, Sydney, Australia, I managed to dig up an old Super Nintendo and a few games. Worked perfectly. In my younger days I owned a large waste hauling company. Tons of stories over a 20-year career. Scariest, when I first started I would run the routes if someone needed off or was sick. I was running our front end loader one night and was dumping a McDonald's at 2:30 in the morning. After I opened the gate I climbed back in my truck and was just starting to raise the can to dump it, and a very surprised homeless guy jumped out of the container. Had it been another half second I wouldn't have seen him, as he would have been out of my sight line, and he would have been dumped and compacted. We hauled some chicken farms and butcher shops, so you always had dead animals to contend with. Nothing like starting the day dumping 40 of dead chickens. Free stuff. all the time. Our company did a lot of specialty work. One time we were contracted to get rid of 20 trailer loads of leather furniture because it had mold on some pieces. Everyone at work that day got a free leather sofa and lover seat. We also hauled a nationwide coffee roaster. FDA is pretty nasty, so we would get perfectly good packaged coffee all the time. If even the shrink wrap was damaged, they would throw out a whole skid. I don't think we ever paid for coffee. Almost every day, someone was coming in with something. We also did all the USPS locations. If you wrote return to sender on most stuff, it went into the dumpster. I had over 10,000 CDs from Columbia House at one point. We do a lot of estate cleanups. When someone's parents die, the parents typically save all this stuff thinking their kids will want it one day, but they don't. By the time mom and dad die, the kids are 60ish and have all the stuff they need. They usually just throw out all that stuff and sell the house for whatever money is left. In their haste they throw out a lot of good stuff. When dumping a load one day, a small wooden box opened up and was filled with about 50 silver dollars from 1922. I still use one today to mark my ball and golf. I'll add more as I think of it. A bicycle seat made with titanium rails. It was uncomfortable as heck and I eventually threw it out. Also one of those little dentist sinks at a park. I used to do recycling outreach for my city and worked closely with the drivers. Things I have collected from cans, neighborhood cleanup piles, dozens of bicycle wheels and tires, several complete bikes, tons of books, tons of lumber and tools, and the craziest thing I've taken home, a working treadmill. I still have it. I expected to find some one man's trash, other man's treasure type of things from this thread. Instead it's crazy Americans throwing away useful stuff. I feel conflicted. The land of excess. Many of my first computers came out of dumpsters. Oftentimes there was absolutely nothing wrong. The company just upgraded and into the dumpster the old one went. Rarely did I find something that was totally beyond repair, and even then I could salvage parts. I'm no garbage man, but grew up in the Bronx. My brother and I found a body in a dumpster behind our building once. Coolest because he had been dead for hours and it was night. Craziest because he was foaming at the mouth. Not a garbage man, but I used to live by a gated community and I knew the gate code. Every Sunday night they would put out their trash. I would drive in there with my truck after dark and collect the goods. Lawnmowers, working flat screens, patio furniture, tools, nightstands, dressers, all usually in pretty good shape. People did that in my ungated neighborhood. Weirdest thing. I saw a woman step out of her Mercedes and she took my uncarved pumpkins that I set out to the curb. It's probably too late for this now. I worked as a garbage man for a few years before I became an OTR driver. My first week in sanitation I found a chewed up, burned dildo. The last month I worked there, I found a freaking human index finger in a biohazard bag. In 2 years I found lots of stuff. I kept some, like a huge box of baseball cards that ended up being worth about a whole $15. A box fan I still own today. It works. A lawnmower that was in perfect condition. It looked like it was straight out of the crate. On top of all of that I found a lot of drug paraphernalia. Once I found a 50-gallon trash can full of cannabis trimmings. The homeowner was the coolest guy on my route and tipped the best a crisp $100. But overall, you people are disgusting. I saw a lady toss a couple hundred records on the side of the road about 25 years ago. I hit the brakes. She said take them if you want, not being a moron. I did. I still wonder if her husband came home that day to a surprise. She seemed a bit upset. It was loaded with tons of classics. Buddy worked as a garbage man. Coolest he ever saw with thousands of magic cards. Sadly they were soaked in dirt and water. Not me, but my co-worker found a few dead swans in one of our customers' garbage pails. They weren't just dead but completely covered in blood. I've gotten calls from customers asking me to warn the drivers about a raccoon that must have gotten into their pail at some point during the week. Wasn't able to escape and died inside. Just so we wouldn't think they were weird. But I never got an explanation or a return call about the dead swans in the trash. Killing swans is a near felony where I live. You probably should have called the police. Not exactly a garbage man, but I work in thrift store. The place where you bring your old stuff is essentially a cleaner dump. We get all kinds of things, leftover stuff from bankrupt stores, computer parts, a surprising amount of cartanas, for some reason, that kind of thing. The coolest thing I've seen though was when some colleges were sent to collect stuff from an antique shop. We got some really cool old furniture from that. It sold for quite a high amount, too. My uncle had a rubbish business which mostly operated in a small affluent community. During the 80s it is where a lot of pro athletes lived. I have some cool old Converse high tops worn by a former Boston Celtics great. I worked as a garbage man for a summer. Found an HD TV, Nintendo Wii, and PS1 all in one go. Also $800 of free crap from cereal boxes. Found the World War II Mauser rolled up in a carpet. The stock was a little burnt and it was rusty as heck. Cleaned it up and took it to the range and fired it. Fired flawlessly. Had my eye on another gun so I went to sell it online and talked to a dude who told me to take it apart and see how many serial numbers matched. Turns out Nazis put serial numbers on almost every part and turns out the one I had was rare in the fact that they all matched so he paid double the asking price. Pretty awesome. Oh, and once a sleeping dude scared the crap out of me when I went to dump a dumpster. You can always check out our dumpster diving and see people bragging about finding things like unopened packages of shipping peanuts or 300 slightly expired cans of diced tomatoes. I didn't know people like that were real until my dad dated a crazy. She would get antsy driving past dumpsters if there was one big thing, like a mattress, hanging out cause she figured there would be something else good in there. More a creepy story. My dad, who works in the waste disposal industry, and why I use a throwaway, was one time on his tour with his truck. He was disposing garbage from large containers. It was winter and he checked one of the containers. He does it often, because they stuck sometimes from the cold. He opened one of the container and saw a homeless man sleeping in it. Holy crap, he could have accidentally killed that man by dumbing him into the squeezer of the truck. Just a funny anecdote from me. As I was 17 years old I worked as an assistant in the waste disposal, just to pay for my car license and car. I found it very funny, but pretty predictable, that you see a lot of P magazines in the pile at the paper recycling. The digital age made them so obsolete. When I was younger, a family friend worked as a garbage man in a ritzy shopping town, and he let me ride with him a few times. This probably wasn't legal, would not recommend. I still have the perfectly working electric sander and air compressor we found in someone's garbage. I guess a lot of it was wives telling husbands to get rid of stuff in the garage. I also got a working backpack leaf blower in this way from someone's front yard. I asked the guy why he was giving it away and he said his wife was making him. I don't get why people throw away functional things. Custom built conservatory style building was used for a 3-day event, Claw Game Fair, then torn down and put in our skip. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.